In many ways, a lot of the templates of unhealthy relationships were taught to us in the media. I'm going to treat you really badly, and then I'm going to see the light, and I'm going to change. And what's the script we get from that? People who are really mean to us can change. I've been doing this for 25 years. I can tell you that does not happen. Okay? And so, but we're given that, we're given the beauty and the beast of it all. Right? Love them enough and dance in their whack palace enough, and they are going to turn into a prince. Right? After they've now beaten your family and held you captive. That's not how that story ends, by the way. Okay? Our communities. We watch how love and relationships are created in our communities. How many of you, as an adult, live more than 500 miles away from where you grew up? About half the room, okay? The reason I'm asking you that is in a culture dictates how we think about love, but the places we grew up, I have friends who grew up in the Midwest. They're like, you know, people get married younger in the Midwest, in the United States, right, than they do, for example, in the coastal cities. There was a different pressure to get partnered up. So the what love meant, even in some regions, and what we see and what's around folks is different. We observe it in our peers' families. And one thing we also know is when people grow up in a toxic relational system in their family, and they see their peers have functional, like their families have functional relationships, it can actually create a schema of shame around love. Like, how come everyone else has got this worked out, and I am so embarrassed, I'm not even gonna have my friends over, right? So then we start equating shame and love. So almost as though we're not capable of it, because we didn't see it enacted in our families of origins. We also see it in our extended family systems. And I'm sure many of you, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, the whole thing, they're having the relationships, and that's another place you're learning about love. Our early dating relationships, I cannot put too strong a point on how important those relationships you got into in middle school and high school and early adulthood are. They set a tone we don't always want to admit to, right? We really, really don't. And for many people, that was their first experience of being abused in a relationship. And it may not have happened again, but it was enough to set a tone and an expectation. Also, because adolescent brains are different than adult brains, the choices you made were different. It sets this schema of what love is. And then the relationships our friends are having. How often do you ever compare your relationship to your friends' relationships? None of you do. That's actually really bold. That's great. I do. You know, so we look at other people's relationships and saying, they're communicating quite nicely. Or, oh, the grocery store is not a screaming match. This is interesting. We watch other people's relationships and we shift schemas. There's sometimes things we don't ask. How often do you ask your friends, how often do you and your partner have sex? It's tricky. It's almost as uncomfortable as asking people how much money they make, right? Some of you do, but a lot of us don't, because we may either be uncomfortable with the answer we have in our own lives, or we're uncomfortable with our own relationship, okay? Is there anything else? What other places did you learn about love from? What am I missing? Disney. Well, we're gonna put that under the media. And Disney, it's just all a mess. And don't underestimate, there's kids watching it. Kids who become adults, right? And it's very rescue. It's very, very rescue oriented. It's very gendered. And again, other than like we did sort of the, phase 2 Disney of like Frozen and things like that, but it's still, we didn't grow up with that. We grew up with lots of Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast and a mess. I mean, I spent half my children's childhood deprogramming them. So it's a lot. Anything else other than adding Disney? Anything else? Religion. Thank you. Religion. So religion is a fraught space where we learn about love. Some of it comes down to an unconditionality, but a lot of it also comes back to stuff around duty and obligation, shame at breaking a union, that kind of thing, especially if it's unhealthy. All of this stuff, we're learning from all these things. Anything else? We've got religion, we've got Disney. Anything else you'd add about places you learned about love? Say it again. Pets and animals. Yeah, that's like the best possible world. If I could marry the cat, I would be in great shape. Like, though the cat's really diffident, but the cat always comes back around. And it's like, in fact, actually, the cat might be a good example for why I've been in a lot of bad relationships. But yes, animals. So for a lot of kids, though, that became the one place you learned that doing for something resulted in a truly reciprocal relationship, which you may not have ever had a template for a reciprocal relationship before. Anything else? Culture. And then again, I would even put like a lot of this stuff under this larger rubric of culture. I agree with you. Societally, this is dictated. And thus, somebody, if we were giving this lecture in South Asia or in the global South, that's going to be very different than maybe the conversation we'd have here. Yeah?
Institutions, work, healthcare.
Yep. Thank you. Institutions, work, healthcare. I'd throw family court in there, right? Because all of that does dictate how we think about love, and if we've gone through those systems, how we continue to consider what love is, okay? I want everyone, and I want you to do this at your tables, okay? And have it as a conversation for like just a couple minutes, because I don't have a lot of time up here. I want you to think for a minute, and we'll call on a couple of tables, what are your criteria for a healthy relationship? If somebody said to you, describe this is an exam. I need you to describe what a healthy relationship is. What happens in your healthy relationships? So there's the definition, but there's actually what happens. Every one of you in this room has one healthy relationship. You know why? Because if you didn't, you wouldn't have had the wherewithal to get into this room. Okay? So all of you have one. I hope you have more than one. And then, what has happened in your most toxic relationships? Behaviors, actions. I want you to think about this behaviorally. In your tables, you can talk amongst yourselves, you can make notes, take a minute or two, and then we're going to come back together. And I really want, especially those second two questions, what has happened, what happens or happened in your healthiest relationships, and what has happened in your most toxic, antagonistic, narcissistic, manipulative, use whatever term you want to capture that relationship. Take a minute, we're going to come back together and take your answers on, ideally discuss amongst yourselves. Okay, and I know we could talk about this all day, but we don't have all day. So I'm going to bring us back into the room. Okay, bring us back into the room, and whoever's running the mic, be ready to run. Okay? Could somebody from one of the tables raise your hand and tell me if you're going to share what happens, one or two things that happens in healthy relationships and one or two that happen in toxic.
There's so many. Reciprocity, autonomy, encouragement.
Okay, so reciprocity, autonomy, encouragement. Okay, let's pretend somebody doesn't know what those words mean. What does that mean?
In reciprocity, you guys are both giving equally in the relationship.
Okay.
One person's not doing more work than the other.
Right, so there's a sense, and that's perceptual. Someone looking from the outside may not think it's balanced, but it only matters if the two people subjectively believe that whatever this give and take is, it feels right. It feels right in my body, it feels right. Let's flip her to toxic.
We had control, various types of abuse, and contempt.
Okay, control, various types of abuse and contempt, and we're going to have the contempt kings coming, king and queen, coming in after me to talk about where I mean, Gottman's work on contempt is so crucial. It's really almost like the relationship killer, right? But you said contempt, control.
Yep.
Okay, when you say control, what do you mean?
I think it would be defined as one person, I guess, leading the relationship more
Okay.
than the other, but in a way that that person maybe doesn't have awareness or power to stand up for themselves or to have autonomy.
Okay, so one person's really running the show and the other person really has lost or doesn't have a voice.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so another table. Toxic, healthy, what's happened in the relationships you've had like this? You can even use examples. Anybody? Nobody?
At the back here.
Oh my God, it's like this perimenopausal striptease I have to do every damn day. Oh my God. Please.
We talked about the influence of blame in a
Yeah.
relationship that's healthy versus toxic.
Oh, interesting.
And in a healthy relationship, ideally, we put the blame on the situation at hand
Okay.
rather than on each other.
Okay.
Versus in a toxic relationship, we're likely to blame each other, or there might be one direction of blame if it's
Right.
particularly that someone just kind of rolls over and takes it over and over again with
That's
that
interesting.
sense of responsibility.
Yeah, that's a very interesting take.
But if
I
you
like
can
that.
take something and just say the situation that you grew up this way and I grew up this way, therefore
Yeah.
we have different models, is the thing that we
Love
have to
that.
deal with here.
So it's interesting because this concept of blame is such a fraught concept, and we often think, oh, right away, unhealthy. But you're right, it goes back to a concept in psychology we call attribution. It's a big issue in understanding things like depression, right? The attribution we make about something, like why did this happen, has a lot to do with how we feel about it afterwards. And if the attribution is on, so in unhealthy relationships, one person tends to almost always blame the other person, right? They're projecting their shame and their ick onto someone else. And that becomes a very asymmetric relationship. But things go wrong for a reason. And this idea that actually the blame lies in this situation, whatever it was, there was a breakdown in communication, there was a this, there was a that. And it's in that, what a lot of folks have been talking about here is that third piece of the relationship. That's great.